afternoon, and today we're going to talk about domestic syndication with my very interesting panelists. So all the way on the end, we have Mort Marcus, look up, who is co-president of Debmar Mercury. Next to him, we have Scott Sternberg, who is an independent producer and president of Scott Sternberg Productions. We have John Nagowski, president of CBS Television Distribution, and we have Sean Compton, president of programming and entertainment at Tribune. So our panel is titled Syndication, Is There a Pulse? Which Rick Feldman and I debated a little. We wondered if it was too negative, but we concluded that certainly syndication has a pulse or we wouldn't be here. But so I wanted to ask you guys, does syndication have a pulse? And why? And also, what are you doing to sort of speed that pulse up? I'll just start on the end, Mr. Marcus.
You start with me? All right, it's a bit of a long-winded answer because I've actually...
Because you're long-winded.
Because I'm long-winded, and I thought about it, actually. I just only just for this one question, it's the only note is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you test those notes, or do you...
I haven't focus tested them.
Oh, okay.
I haven't focus tested them. Yeah, we're going to run it for 10 days in a row and see if it gets picked up by the press. There are from my perspective, there are 5 main reasons why the marketplace is healthy. And for us, really, we don't exist really unless the stations are healthy. We have no business unless the stations are healthy. So for me, when we look at it, we're kind of saying, all right, what's going to happen to the stations if you go out 5 years? And we looked at it and said, okay, there's 5 main things that arrows are pointing up in a big, serious way for TV stations. One is retransmission consent. And notwithstanding the fact that the networks are trying to get a large piece of that pie, it was 0 and it's going to be a significant dollar amount. So the retransmission is one. Second one is the dropping of the cable penetration rates. So for example, like in Los Angeles, 10 years ago, the cable penetration, DMA, in Los Angeles was 75%. Today, it sits at 45%. And the reason for that is the advent of satellite and phone as television choices. So what happens to that, what that means is that the cable interconnect is getting weaker and less competitive against the broadcast stations. The third point is the severe drop-off of newspaper advertising. Up until a couple years ago, in almost every major city, the newspaper generated more ad revenue than all of the television stations combined. But they're dropping at a significant rate, and not because of the economy, but because of the internet and all the other things that are affecting the readership of the newspaper. So the television stations are starting to, and they're going to continue to get some of that local ad revenue. The Supreme Court ruling where they allowed corporations to advertise in a political race, that might be the biggest point. I mean, that's billions of dollars all going locally. And then finally, the selling of cars. The car industry is back up spending a lot of money, but more importantly, in the last 20 years, they haven't really had anything to sell new. It was just like another new model of the same car. But now they're coming out with electric cars and cars like that, and they're going to do something that they haven't done in a long time, which is truly market those new cars to sell you. And we think that's going to be a really significant, again, that's a very local driven business. So we think those 5 points drive to a very, very healthy state for a broadcast station, which makes it better for us as syndicators.
So, Sean,
ditto.
Okay. That's what he wants to say to everyone.
Just move on.
But
That's
you
good.
program
But it's all the
station.
reasons why you can't say you have no money anymore.
Right.
Oh,
and
that's
now
right.
you're going to be held to that.
Let's talk about that. No, I agree with everything you said. Move on.
John, do you agree with Mort, and do you think stations are healthier? Do you think they're going to have more money to spend on programming? And even if they do, will they spend it on programming?
I think they will spend it. I think they are slowly coming back. We've sensed it this year. I think we're all seeing a little bit more freeing up of their checkbook. I agree with everything that Mort says as far as why they should, but I think what we've done is we've kind of gotten them a little bit hooked on the heroin, so to speak, of barter. And I think we got to get away from that mentality, because it's just driving our production budgets down so low that we can't really, I think, start the proper kind of programming that we need to produce. It's all, kind of a one big circle it's a circle jerk that we've been on, and we need to get back on a nice circle that is where we can start making some good money. Because the more money they make, the more they can afford to pay us. The better the programming is, the higher the ratings are, the more money they bring in. They're all related to each other. And instead what we've done, we're starting to create programming that I think a lot of stations just feel is fungible. And if we just keep going that direction, I'm just afraid that, you know, we're our own self-fulfilling prophecy. We're going to drive ourselves right into, you know, kind of passé.
Stations are going to pay a premium for programming, clearly, that works. We just renewed 2.5 Men through 2021. I'll be a grandfather by the time that deal's up. And that, I mean, that's because it's a powerful show. It's one of our most powerful shows. It is our most powerful show in terms of rating delivery. And the fact is, you have some sales departments that will tell you you have shows that are on hit lists and they can't sell them. But I'd rather take a salesperson that will sell, I'd rather take the worst salesperson to sell a 4 rating than the best salesperson to sell a 1 rating or less. So, you know, we will pay a premium as broadcasters for programming that generates a return. It's very simple. If there's a return, we'll invest. If there's a lot of risk and low return, you know, that's when you do deals like barter. You know, and then if you do a deal with that's barter, that's a little goof-proof, where if it doesn't work out for you, you put it in a time period that doesn't cost you a lot of money, you let the show go. Meanwhile, you do a show that's a barter deal and the show pops a number, then we come and say, hey, let's negotiate more cash and less barter.
Okay, so how then does First Run prove itself? How does First Run get you to buy it, and how do you guys make sure a First Run show is worth him buying it?
Do I start?
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, we're talking about that because, you know, every broadcast group is different. It depends on who you're affiliated with. We are primarily CW stations in the major markets. And what we buy, and our lane is sitcoms. We do very well with sitcoms. And, you know, the other station groups that rely on Entertainment Tonight and the other big shows, Jeopardy, Wheel, they do very well. Our lane is sitcoms, and we've tried to get out of that lane and have made mistakes. Our audience knows the Tribune Group as a sitcom destination, an early fringe and late fringe. So that's what we're looking for. Unfortunately, we're in that period again where it's starting to dry up. And, you know, so do you go into the First Run scripted business? You know, Mama's Family did quite well years ago doing that. I mean, is that an area to explore? Tyler Perry's doing it over at TBS. Deb Maher is the most aggressive in that platform and doing a very good job with it. Why are we letting those shows go to cable and not broadcast? I'll tell you why, because a lot of us broadcasters are afraid to take that plunge. So we've got to get over that. And, you know, Tribune could be one of the groups that hopefully lead that as soon as we find something that works. Or there's something that we believe will work, because you really don't know. And that's where you've got to test. I mean, that's where Mort's been great with talk shows they've tested that have worked, haven't worked.
Did he tee you up with that before this panel?
No, because
He won't test one thing of ours.
I won't test anything because you're out to get me. That's a different story, and that's a different panel.
He's waiting for it to be a success, though. Then he says he'll overpay.
Exactly.
So that's good.
No. Look, the fact of the matter is that, just even going back to the points I made, that the stations are going to invest, like Sean and others, because it's going to increase their retransmission leverage, it's going to increase their rating points, it's going to increase their buys from the car companies, all those things. They have to. And now that the marketplace is coming back, we think that it's going to be, we think that First Run syndication is going to be very, very, very aggressive.
Since you have also got to talk yet, and you've got a few shows in development, so.
Well, for a producing standpoint, I think we have to, you know, as we know, we have to work with a distributor and also work with a concept. And for us to go out, we need to find a talent, a high concept of sort. I mean, I think Talk and Court pretty much are dominating, other than the entertainment strips as well, and trying to find out what the station groups are looking for, what the distributors may be willing to invest in, and try to bring them the right concepts and the right talent that we can develop ideas for. And ultimately, I think that, you know, the time periods are there, certainly in the daytime, that everyone's looking for the next zip, zap, something that's going to really be the big next hit. And the continuation for producers is always the excitement of trying to find something with passion that you can also pass off to the distributor and a station group.
So let's go back to tests for a second. So Mort loves them. John doesn't really love them, and Sean's tested a couple things. So do you guys think that, I mean, I know what Mort thinks about this, but do you think that tests are the way to go? Does that prove to people that first run works, or does it waste time, hurt time periods? What do you think?
Let me just say one thing before John jumps in. That it is a way to get money. In other words, because what happens is that if it works, you have a bit more of a known commodity versus and we do it too, a 5-minute sales tape, let's say, that's trying to convince a marketplace to buy a year or 2 years or whatever. But so if something really works, you have much more information to go to a Sean to say, look at the ratings it did, look at the 10 shows, the 50 shows, whatever you did, and so you can justify asking for a higher price just because it's an easier business decision. Anyway, that's my...
Well, I mean, we just did a test when we worked with Mort and his group, and
I thought we stopped talking about that one.
And yeah, we're not talking about that. But I'm just talking about testing in general. Right. I think it really depends on a lot of yes, and it takes a lot of things because you're compressing a piece of talent as well as a concept into a very short period of time.
Right, so it's not perfect either.
It's definitely not perfect, and it takes time to develop and get the show to a place, if it's talent driven, so that it's actually in its groove. So sometimes I think it works and sometimes it doesn't.
That's a good point. Some shows probably don't lend itself to doing a test. I think that's probably fair.
Okay, John, do you want to speak against the test?
You know, look, I've been not exactly a proponent of it.
I'm trying to get you guys in a fight here in the disco room.
Mort and I have had this out. We're like, we've gotten bloody over it. Exactly. It's not even worth it anymore.
You want to sit here?
No, you're here for a reason.
I think Scott kind of defined really in a nice, polite way, kind of my feeling about it. I think the difficulty of a test is these are big shows and they're big talent and they're people we have to work with. And I'd rather try and, in my case, I'd rather try and test some of what we want to do on our other television shows, see whether or not we really feel the person maybe has the ability to do it, or if it's a concept, test the concept in maybe a small piece like we did with The Insider. And if we really feel there's something there, then go ahead and really get behind it. Because unfortunately, you don't know anything in 10 weeks. It takes longer than that for people to really, in today's fractured world, you know, where they've got 500 choices, for them to even find the show. And so it's hard to put enough promotion behind it. It's hard to get an audience. And then once you've kind of get there, did you really find out enough about it? I just don't think there's time. So it's not that I disagree with the testing. If it would work, it'd be great. But I think it's hard to get yourself to put a lot of effort and spend millions of dollars, get no advertising revenue against it. All you're doing is burning cash. And I'm just not in that business, you know. I mean, I work for a company that, you know,
we like to burn it.
Yeah, you're not in the cash burning business.
Yeah.
Well, you're an independent, but you know, you kind of have made, that's your model. You know, our model is one that's predicated on, I want to be in the black day one. And if we're not going to be in a profit position, we won't do the show. You know, that's kind of where we are.
He's right. We definitely do not don't take that look. We're willing to invest the money and at a reasonable,
You also get other people to invest their money.
Yeah, no, but we're willing to take a risk and go in the red, and if we really believe in it. And the testing for us, it's really not just about the rating. It's about whether or not we believe that the talent and the show can be produced creatively in the way it should be. And so it's not just a rating in 10 weeks or 20 weeks or whatever it ultimately is. And but it's not perfect either. It's not. But we are definitely willing to spend money. We do not have to walk out in the black, and we don't expect the stations to take the full risk and put us off the hook. We believe that we've even said this, like in the case of Fox, who's been a great partner on some of our tests, that we actually believe the perfect test is one where we're both at risk a little bit, because we should be chasing it creatively as hard as we can to get into the black, and they should be at risk just a little too, because they should be promoting it hard to make it work. And so if we're both at risk just a little, that's probably the right investment on both sides. It's not right if they've taken the risk and we're in the black going, woohoo, we won, it doesn't even matter if it works. You know, you could think back to some of the Roseanne or some of the other ones where it was too one-sided, Jane Pauley maybe, too one-sided. So we really believe that the right mix is somewhere in the middle, where the studio or the distributor takes a bit of the risk, and the station community takes a touch of the risk as well. And so you're both in the game.
Well, it filters down also to the producer, to the producers and the producers team, because we get our cues from the distributor, from the station group to say, here's what we want, here's what we want. We try to distill all of that and try to execute that in whatever the period of time is, if it's 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it may be. So we have masters that we're serving that we have to really listen to. And hopefully at the end of it, you have a product that's actually doing some sort of a number.
And then you also learn, in the case of Fran, we tested it and we've learned we don't want to go forward with it.
And to be honest, I mean, it didn't do so well rating-wise, but we also just felt that creatively it didn't get there. So I think if we really believed in it creatively, we might have taken a different look of how we went forward, but it's okay, and we feel bad
But that's
about
why
it.
you test.
That's why you test.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to, by the way,
Yeah, we
You're
feel
gonna
not
fail
everything's going
90%
to
of
work.
the
Most
time.
things aren't going to work, and you know, we believe that there should be 20 to 25 tests a year. I've said this to a lot of the broadcasters, not by us. I mean by the marketplace, by the industry, by all the groups, by all the studios, distributors. If there was 20 to 25 tests a year, and maybe it's too many, then what would happen though is you'd get real hits. Real hits. Look at the broadcast networks. They take tons of shots. They try really hard. Every order they make is a test. They do 6 episodes. They don't ever order 22. They order 6 or 8. 13 is like the world ended. So every single order they make is a test. They don't do one thing that's not a test. And the reality is that they ultimately find the Grey's Anatomies and the Modern Families of the world because they do it that way. And the marketplace that we're in, we believe, needs to find, you know, we've just lost Oprah and Regis. Not us, but the marketplace. Fall 11, there's no Oprah and Regis. We need to find shows that can get those kind of rating points back into the marketplace. Those are going to be tough to replace.
But those aren't really tests. I mean, that's
networks.
their business model.
The networks test every single order they do as a
But
test.
you're calling it a test. It's not a test.
It is a test.
That's the network schedule.
But they order 6, and if they don't like it, they buy another one. They don't
Okay, but
order.
Mort,
They don't
I mean,
order
you can't
100.
You can't compare taking off regularly scheduled programming in a time period to put a show on, which is a test.
It's the same thing.
Whereas they start the season, they go out in a upfront, they sell those shows for a big premium. Okay?
And then after 6
And
episodes,
don't
they
lose
take
that-
it off.
And trust me, they're losing no money. They're making money.
Not the studios. They're taking
Well,
the deficit
I
on
know,
those shows.
But the studio, they don't consider it a test. They're launching the show
But
on the network.
All right. Well, I don't consider mine a test either. I'm assuming it's going to go forward, but sometimes it doesn't. What's the difference? I mean, if you go
That's a nice
if
assumption.
you go forward on a drama and it goes 6 episodes, you think
Right.
I'm in business,
But
then
here's
they
the-
cancel it. It was a
Okay.
test. It didn't work.
But here's the difference with what you do. Okay, and I don't want to polarize you. Anybody doing a test, they stick the show in a lineup next to my shows, which are established and working. And next thing I know, I have a lead-in that's doing, you know, chicken scratches
the
across
same as the
it.
network.
No,
I'm talking about syndication now.
Okay,
A
that's the same.
lineup. Okay, this is their lineup. They'll have Judge Judy, they'll have Dr. Phil, and somewhere in there, all of a sudden, there's this test. And all of a sudden, my lead-in is impacted because I do a less than a 1 rating with Fran Drescher, let's say. Okay, so my show gets affected, their lineup gets affected, their big performers start performing less, and they have another time period that's wrecked. And so I look at it as, that isn't like
With all due respect, if they bought a show from me for 2 years and they put it in that same slot and it did a 0.2 and they say, I'm sorry, John, my lead-in's bad, but I'm stuck for 2 years. How about 10 weeks and you're out? I mean, and then they put something else and they find that works. I mean, if a network ordered 2 years of a show
Right.
off of a pilot, the affiliate body they'd riot. They'd say, well, are you kidding me?
They did
why
riot
Why would you
last
do that? You would never, there's no chance they would ever do that. And
but-
that's what we're doing in this
Okay, but
business.
in using that example, that's not what they do. They never have done that. The network's never done that. The model of the network has always been order 6 to 13 episodes and pick up the back end.
If it works.
That's it.
that's how it works. Yeah, well, what do you want? You want to go do something? We can go. Yeah, want to play some tennis? You know, I can't help it.
When the hell was that shot taken, Mort? I mean, seriously, let's get on to that
A
for a
couple weeks
second.
ago. A couple weeks back.
Okay, let's talk,
Syndication had a bigger pulse when he looked like that.
When the
All
clock
right.
is ticking down.
let's talk about something that I think Mort mentioned, even though I could really let you go on test for the next half hour. Regis is leaving, Mary Hart is leaving, Oprah is leaving. So, sort of leaving. So, what do you guys think that is going to mean for syndication? Do you think it means here's an opportunity to breathe some new life into syndication, maybe bring in new audiences, maybe try out some new people, or does it just mean further degradation of those time slots? Let's go with Sean.
You picked the one guy that doesn't have Oprah.
True.
Well,
voice it off on someone else then. We've heard a lot
No,
from
you know what? Yeah, we're going to have an impact. We have Regis in Chicago, and we've talked about it and in the past, and we are worried about an impact there. But look, Kathy Lee left the show years ago, and they did the right thing, and they tested a lot of personalities, and Kelly came back strong, and so there will be an impact. Will you see another Oprah? Probably not. I mean, radio never saw another Howard Stern. I mean, we've never seen another Johnny Carson, but we have Jay Leno, and we have Conan, and we have George Lopez in the nighttime space. So it's all relative. So what scares me is we have very little coming out in 11. I mean, someone was pitching me on Rosie, and they were showing us slides of all the shows that had premiered in the last 15 years. And they say, 10 shows in 1999, 9 shows in 2000, and 10 shows in 2001, and 9 shows. The only 4 shows out of all those shows have stayed. And I said, well, here's what scares me. You get to 2008, and there's 3 shows that premiered in daytime. And Tribune makes a lot of money in daytime. That's a good space for us. And what worries me is it's not just daytime. I'm referring to that because that was the pitch. We have less available to us than we did choice-wise. And that's really what I'm concerned about.
And that's what harkens, not to go here, but it actually kind of takes you back to tests. But 2 of those talent are
Let's not go there.
CBS's. Yeah, you've got Mary Hart going. I mean, you've got Nancy O'Dell coming in, and then obviously Oprah's a big one. But what do you guys think it means, and how are you addressing it?
Well, I think the Live with Regis and the Mary Hart move, they're very similar. Those shows will go on. There's no doubt about it. They'll find somebody that will sit next to Kelly and do just fine. And Nancy O'Dell is going to do just fine. Mary's going to be sorely missed. There's no doubt about it. She was on the show for 29 years. She was a fixture on the television show. But Entertainment Tonight will go on for another 25 years. Oprah leaving syndication is a huge loss. There's no doubt about it. She, for 25 years, she has been, America's, woman's answer to everything. And, that's going to be hard to find. And then when you complicate it also that 25 years ago there were 3 television stations on the air and now there's 500, the launching of that show, I remember where I was sitting when Oprah launched and no one knew that she was going to become what she was. So I kind of look at it as that's the same hope we still have to have. Even with 500 channels, we still got to think we're going to find the next Oprah or that next connection or that next person that can be a hit. So we can't give up, but it does take longer to establish them. And, Oprah took, I don't know, as I recall, it was 6 months and we all knew there was something there. I don't know that it'll be that quick that somebody will, grab the hearts of the woman at home. But we can't stop looking.
We should do a test.
We should.
I have to say,
on your air.
I know it's shocking, and I disagree a little bit, not on the Oprah thing, but on the Regis thing. And I think that actually you're in a much better position than they are on ET, in that it's a compartmentalized magazine show. And not that Mary Hart's not amazing and important to the show, but I think that the content is actually overweighs the host in that particular case. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think in the Regis case, having worked there, so they'll do the right thing and they'll spend the money and they'll try to find the best particular situation. Kelly's great, but Regis is, he's been on the air 50 years. The guy is unbelievable, and people don't even know how good he really is and how much he makes that show what it is. And there's not only is there nobody as good as him, there may not ever have been anyone as good as him doing what he's doing. And I would say that no matter who they get, they may do just fine, but they're not going to do as well. He's just too good. I realized he was getting old and the demos are starting to drop, but Regis is
Well, I
a
think
whole different thing.
It points to, I think, one of the keys of syndication and kind of what you were addressing about the difference in the syndication business model and the network business model, which is that the continuity and the loyalty of the viewers, and that people want to see, they want to hang out with Regis every day, or Ellen or Oprah. That's what makes syndication work, and that's much different than the network. So if you interrupt with 2 weeks of Fran, maybe people say, well, I really showed up here to watch Judge Judy. Where's Judge Judy? And then that's a problem. So that's true. I mean, there's that argument to the testing.
You're taking John's side?
No.
Yeah, but you know what? As broadcasters, we would pick the weakest hour. And can you improve from the crap that we've got in that time period then? Because obviously,
crap,
you're not
official term.
Yeah, I'll use that word, because you're not going to go out and test if you don't have the need. We don't have a lot of daytime need. We're actually very happy with Maury, Jerry, and Steve Wilkos. And 3 years ago, by the way, this is kind of defense to you. 3 years ago, we wanted to cancel Wilkos because it wasn't that impressive. And over time, we saw the numbers going up, and we need to stick with this show. And now it's, for our group, it's doing very well because we stuck with it.
Yeah,
and so a lot of it, we can't expect viewers just overnight to find and fall in love with a personality, especially someone that's unknown.
From a producing standpoint too, when an Oprah or Regis, whoever might go away and the time periods are open, then it becomes an opportunity for the creative community to say, okay, these are time periods that are opening. We need to now be a little more aggressive, look for new talent that we can partner up with distributors, station groups, and so forth, and hope for a shot and a chance that you're going to get a program on the air. The other thing, too, is that as the eyeballs go through the years, they're getting older. The younger ones are also getting older. So who are they attracted to? I'm sure you target the 18 to 34s or
not in daytime.
25 to 54s, whoever it might be. But in terms of the talent, what talent's going to work for those particular demographics?
One thing that I've talked to Mort a lot about is if you're looking for a first-run hit, where do you look? And you've talked a lot about trying to develop for Access or 5 o'clock, because that's a highly watched hour. So what do you guys think about developing for Access? How hard is it? What kinds of ideas can you bring to the table? Or do you think there's a need in that time period?
Well, we're kind of doing that with our dating show, with Excused. And I think there is room. I think the sitcom marketplace has dried up. You listen to Sean here, it's a big part of their makeup. But if you look at what's coming down the pike, you got 2 television shows. One next year in Big Bang and one, in 13 with...
I just pray to God Charlie Sheen lives for 35 more episodes.
Yeah, well, don't we all? Certainly we do on our network.
God, every time I look at TMZ, I'm freaking out.
Yeah, well, it hasn't hurt your ratings. So, but I think as there's less and less inventory coming out, we need to be developing something that could at least be a companion to those sitcoms. And, if we're onto something here and if Excuse breaks out and runs in Access, that'd be great. If it doesn't, we're fine. It could be a late night show, but I just think, the humor that a show like that can bring, it brings a little reality, which cable is just dominated in. If we can get the right chemistry and the right, show rolling out on a regular basis, and it can amuse people in the same way that a sitcom does, maybe it can at least supplement them. It doesn't mean it's going to replace the sitcom. I'm not even, trying to think that that's the mode. But I know what these guys pay for sitcoms, and I know what they're paying for Excused. And, so Excused is going to be a real profitable television show if it takes off.
So, going back to the Access question, I know you were pitching Conan for Access. So, considering what that could have been, what else would you look for in that time period?
I just think it's the same thing to us. I think that the marketplace is going to be robust in first-run syndication, whether it be daytime or early fringe access. There's lots of needs. It's obviously a much riskier game when you start going 5 to 8 o'clock. It's got to be a bigger show. Excuse is an interesting way to try it because it's less expensive route to go in, and if it works, it could be great for both the station and the studio. But look, I think that's an area where the stations would step up for the right project, and it gives them more leverage on retransmission if they could get a hit in there, because then they're not getting it from their network, and they're not sharing it with a cable network, and they're not, they're doing it by themselves. And I think all that leads. I think there's going to be lots of that. I think there's going to be attempts, whether they're tests or 1-year plays or whatever they are. I think there's going to be those tries, and we would love to take those tries.
Yeah, I think that's a point to be emphasized, that stations need the first run hits to make themselves unique to cable operators when they go and hit them up for retrans. You can't just have a bunch of repeats on or a bunch of triple runs.
You can't just have what your network is feeding you. You need to have your own identity and your own place in the market.
Let's talk about, we talked about it a little bit, cash plus barter. We just went through a big phase where everything was barter, and now I think we're seeing cash come back, especially in the sitcom market. But what are you guys seeing out in the marketplace in terms of stations being willing to pay cash right now, not necessarily in the next year or two for the reasons that Moritz already brought up?
Well, I mean, they are paying some cash. You know, Warner Brothers is out getting cash on Anderson Cooper. Yeah, we're getting cash on Excused. And, you know, it's not flowing out of the pocketbooks, but it's coming out of the pocketbooks some. And, you know, to Sean's point, you know, I think certainly the stations are willing, if the show starts showing success, they don't mind paying. So it isn't that they are unwilling to pay. It's just been, there was a abundance of advertising revenue available, spots available, and so it was easier for them to give up those spots than to give us cash.
I mean, honestly, we haven't quite felt it the same way, but you know, I think the stations, in the case of Anderson Cooper and Excused, are paying an appropriate rate for what the risk level feels like on those shows, and I think, you know, if you came out with Conan, you know, at the time, they would have paid real money. I think, and whether he may not have worked, by the way, but I think that the perception of it was so big that they might have paid, and I think it's just a risk factor. And Anderson, it probably seems like about right. Like they're paying some money, but you know, he hasn't worked so well in prime on CNN. He's good though, and you know, so you know, it's sort of like it's interesting. It's good programming, news stuff, maybe. So you pay, so it's okay. And Excuse has a different level, and you know, our same thing with Jeremy Kyle and Wendy. You know, what I like more, but I think actually we're being paid appropriately. I really do. I don't believe that the stations are. I don't think we're saying, oh my God, I can't believe they're not paying us $3,000 and they're paying us $100. I don't really think that. If I don't have another offer in the marketplace, why should they? Just to be nice? I don't think so.
Well,
so we feel it's very appropriate.
That is never a conversation we have when we're negotiating a deal.
Yeah, pay me an appropriate amount.
Well, you know what? It varies by market. Look, it's all profitable. I mean, we all have margins. I have to report to a boss who wants a certain margin on a show or a certain return. And so it's not like we want the distributors to be healthy, because for them to launch more shows, we've got to pay cash. As broadcasters, they need us to be healthy.
That's right.
Either that or just go sell everything to cable. And the fact is, but by the way, the broadcasters' barter is worth a lot of money, a lot more than cable. So broadcasting isn't dead. And you know what? So we've got to keep producing shows. Right now, Access, we're not looking for Access. We have 2.5 Men. We're extremely happy. We've got new episodes coming every year. It's a wonderful show for our station group. So we're focusing our efforts towards, you know, what we're going to do in 2013 when we have 2 to 3 hours worth of sitcoms fall off. You know, do we renew them? Do we you know, renew some of them and do first run?
If they're ours, we hope you renew them.
You didn't sell me any of yours, so because we were too cheap, right?
Exactly.
But no, but you know, do you do first run scripted? Do you do, you know, shows like Excused? We don't have a lot of Access need now, but in, you know, 2 to 3 years, we're going to have a lot of holes that are going to need to be filled. You're going to pay for, so we lose a show in Late Fringe, 2 sitcoms. Late Fringe, what are we going to pay for that? We're going to pay a fraction of what we'd pay in Early Fringe and Access. So it just depends on the need for the station.
But wouldn't you also rather pay cash in some cases, because then you have the freedom to sell the advertising at the level?
I'd rather for all barter to go away. Because then the best deal in television is a Simpsons deal. You've got no windows. I mean, I'm talking sitcoms here, but you have no windows. You've got the ability to, I mean, in Seattle, we run it in prime time because we have an independent station there. So there are markets where, you know, there are certain shows that I would rather just say, we'll pay you more cash, take the barter out. And other shows, we're okay with the barter. I mean, obviously, daytime, we don't pay a lot of cash, or at least we don't pay Oprah type of cash for our shows. So we're okay with barter in that time period.
Do you hear that from stations much, Sean? That they'd rather pay only cash? That they wish they had that opportunity?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that conversation actually ends up being kind of the mix question that we end up having every time we go out and launch a show. We started with Excused in a like a 2.5, 5 split, and then Fox started talking to us about, well, they'd rather be 5-3. Then we thought, well, maybe we need to go full barter and 4-4, and and then we talked to the advertising guys and decide which way will be the better way for us to go, and then we settle in. Never had to used to think like that.
Where we have to be careful is not cramming in too many units, and that's where we've got to put a cap on it. We cannot say, well, you can't say, well, we need to take one more because you're paying less. It's better for us to pay a little more than for you to take another unit, because then you're just pushing all the eyeballs. Nothing kills me more than when I watch some of these cable networks, I'm not going to mention any names, but where they take an hour and 20-minute movie and it runs for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I mean, how is that? I mean, it's because they're cramming in too many breaks and they're running way too many commercials, and that's a tune-out. That's what's going to drive more people. I mean, if you watch the first break in 2.5 Men, it's 60 seconds long, you're in the show. And you create viewer habits, they know. Even though you've got the intro to the show, go into a break, viewers know because they watch it every night. This is a short break. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we've seen a lot of distributors come to us wanting to up the barter load and still give us our load that we normally are used to. So you're getting 15 or 16 minutes, which, double that per unit count. So it's scary.
Yeah, that's actually one of the hidden advantages, I think, of syndication is the way people watch the ads. They don't tape it, they don't skip, they kind of watch what you've got. I wanted to ask a bit about development, because I think we're seeing some different models of syndication development come into play. One is live at Daryl's Place, which you guys have here, actually. I think he's playing tomorrow night. And then also, John, you hired Aaron Meyerson, and I think he's been brought in to do some different things. But let me start with Scott. And what do you think about using multi-platform opportunities to develop shows?
Well, I think it's essential. I mean, depending on what the content is, whether you're in music, talk, news, or any kind of information, entertainment information, I think to be able to use whatever the basic raw materials are and to be able to find whatever windows are available so that's useful not only for the person that's going to, or the company that's going to put it up, whether it's a web-based show or it's a broadcast show, syndicated show, cable show, or whatever it might be, or a downloadable VOD, whatever it might be. If it's available, I think you try to take the information, especially because if it's really good, other people are going to want to see it. So you want to try to put it out there for more eyeballs to look at. And in the case of our music project, which we're doing with Sean, I think we have a real nice opportunity because of the value of the music and the talent that's coming to the show.
And so, John, can you talk about it too, from what you guys would like to sort of see happen at CTD?
Well, we've just been doing it the same way for a really long time with the same kind of model for a really long time. And what I'm excited about with Aaron is just, I think he brings a new sensibility to it. It's a different set of eyes. It's somebody that's kind of worked in a different model. He's worked at Oxygen. He worked at MTV. He comes from a reality base, and there's a lot of success out there with that. And, if we can start implementing some of those things into our television shows and producing them a little bit more, economically, I think, we win on the cost side and we win on the development side as well. And that's, he's been on the job for a couple of weeks. We're making the rounds. But I think the thing that we're noticing the most is the excitement level from the creative community and from the agent community has been, wow, I feel like the doors have opened at CBS. And they have. Our shingle's out and we want to do more shows.
That's definitely the feeling, I must tell you.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to inspire.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to do some singles, we're going to do some doubles, and we're going to keep looking for the home runs. Mm-hmm. But with Aaron, I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm glad you're hearing that.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And then interestingly, like both Sean and more, you guys have drawn from radio in terms of trying to bring in new personalities. I mean, what do you look at when you look at multi-platform development, and how do you think it can apply?
Why don't you go and talk about your
Test.
British guy?
No, I think that was really where we looked on Jeremy Kyle, which is that he's done this show, the exact show we're going to produce, literally 1,200 times. They've made he's been on the air for 6 years in the UK. It's the #1 show in daytime there, has been for over 5 years now, and they get a bigger audience actually in the daytime than we would expect to get in our daytime here, because he gets such a high share. But he just, we were trying to get into the conflict talk business, and we were looking around, and in all cases, we were going to sit there and go, we're going to have to test it, or how are we going to find this person? And then ITV came in with him, and the fact that he's done it 1,200 times it doesn't mean it's going to work, but he knows how to do it. I mean, there's no question he knows how to do it. So, if we can execute a reasonable show, and it just gives us more confidence to take that try. And additionally, in that particular case, it's sort of interesting from an economic base, which is that because he's a big star in the UK, it actually gives value to our episodes that we produce in the UK and offsets our risk some. But look, we all want to do things as economical as we can. But I have to say, we really are trying. We're a little guy, but we're trying. In our minds, we want to spend more and think big, and try to think of it as an opportunity. We think the marketplace is ready and can deliver the kind of monetary value that could pay off in a big way, and we're trying to look at it that way. But, we maybe won't find anything. I don't know, but we're trying to actually think. We're trying to turn it the other way and say, how big can we think? Not so. I mean, Jeremy is a piece of business, but we are trying to think bigger if we can. We're trying
I want
to
to
think
go
big
on
as
the
we can.
record that I have no problem with you testing in Europe.
Thank you. That's good.
Okay.
What percentage of the country are you clearing with Jeremy?
72, 73, something like that.
So the nice thing about being where I sit, we're going to launch a show. It's going to rival his.
Bill Cunningham.
It's going to be brutal. It's gonna be
Blood
bloodbath
fight
between us. We're going to launch Bill Cunningham in the fall, and because we're a broadcast group, and we're not producing it, because we're not God, Tribune Entertainment hasn't produced a lot of compelling programming, so we're not in that business. So we've got producing partners, and what we're going to do is launch this show in the fall with probably 50 to 60% of the country, where there's no way John or any of the other distributors will launch a show unless they have 85%.
Right.
So our feeling is we'll control it, we'll own the show. If it doesn't work, we can pull it off whenever we feel necessary. And if it does work, it's unlimited opportunities for us.
But I don't know if we've mentioned that if it does work, we'd be very interested in it.
Yes, I know. I say that to you usually. So that's kind of what's unique for us. The fact that we haven't cleared the entire country, we're going to clear our stations, and if it doesn't work, everyone will say, "Told you that was a tougher business than you thought." And if it works, Mort will take the credit probably. So.
What do you think about that? And with you guys just announced that Raycom deal this morning about working with, and you work with Fox too, similarly, individual station groups testing shows on their group. Is that something that we'll see more of, even if you aren't having a
No, that's why when I was saying that we think there should be 20 to 25 tests. I mean, honestly.
You don't care where they come from.
No. Well, again, we're not going to get them all. We don't. Ironically, it could be bad for us as a little guy, but we just think that if there's that marketplace, we'll get our share of chances, and that's okay. And we just want the marketplace to be healthy, because just like Sean said, yeah, you want the distributors to be healthy, but the reality is if there's no healthy station business, there's no business. So to us, if they get hits, we wish we had them all. We're not going to have them all. So we just want there to be as many chances as there can. That Raycom's taking a shot. Okay, we'll see if it goes. But
when you deal with Tribune and you're when you're negotiating a second cycle, the conversation, if the show is very successful, is very short.
Yeah.
If the show stinks and you're begging for the clearance, it's a long conversation, because it's difficult for us to just do that on our own. So it all depends on the success of the show.
So in the end, does syndication have a pulse? I'll take us back to the beginning. So I think in the end we've come do you see that there's a lot of reasons why it's a good business to be? And I think we're sort of starting a new phase of it, which will be interesting and kind of fascinating to watch. So, you guys, thanks so much for participating.
If anybody wants to get their pulse beating quickly, just go over to that tower, walk 26 flights of stairs, like many of us did going into the suites, and there you go.
Thanks, you guys. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.